Central Bank of Nigeria issues guidelines to convert dormant accounts into treasury bills. International Monetary Fund says there is hope for the future. Securities and Exchange Commission to redesign e-dividend platform to launch on July 31st. Plus, oil climbs on tightening supply, IEA demand outlook awaited. Details of this and more on a Business Express on the network service of the NTA, and we are reaching you from Abuja, the nation's capital. I am Benny Adams, your guide. Good to have you join us at this time. We'll start by telling you that the Central Bank of Nigeria has released an exposure draft of guidelines for the management of dormant accounts, unclaimed balances and other financial assets in banks and other financial institutions in Nigeria. The draft guidelines are being issued in response to requests from banks and other stakeholders for further clarification on the procedures for managing dormant and inactive accounts. The guidelines mandate that the CBN shall open and maintain an account called Unclaimed Balances Trust Fund Pool Account to warehouse unclaimed balances in eligible accounts. The funds in the account will be invested in Nigerian treasury bills and other securities as approved by the Unclaimed Balances Management Committee. The scope of the guidelines covers all financial institutions under the purview of the Central Bank of Nigeria and applies to eligible accounts that have been dormant for a period of 10 years and beyond. Eligible dormant accounts, unclaimed balances and other financial assets include various types of deposits, domiciliary accounts, prepaid card accounts and wallets, proceeds of uncleared and unpresented financial instruments, unclaimed salaries and wages and other similar assets. However, the guidelines specify that certain classes of dormant accounts and financial assets are exempted, including government-owned accounts, accounts that are subject to litigation, accounts under investigation by a regulatory authority or law enforcement agency, and encumbered accounts. After years of engagement with development partners and stakeholders in the digital and creative sectors, the federal government finally struck a deal with partners to invest significantly into the digital and creative enterprises in Nigeria. Let's take a look again at the report of our State House correspondent Gideon Ifade as he takes a look at some of the roles each partner is expected to play in the recent deal that kicked off with more than $600 million.
The engagement with the private sector and development partners gave rise to the Investment in Digital and Creative Enterprises program aimed at improving the technological and creative skills of young Nigerians.
I think it's now imperative to commence a coordinated approach towards innovation on the continent, bringing together all stakeholders to coordinate efforts at scaling up investments and building programs that provide the right enabling environment and produce talent pipelines that support the growth of innovation on the continent.
Apart from equipping youth with skills and natural talents, the partners will work to expand access to finance and promote funding and the nurturing of tech-enabled and creative sector enterprises, including the small and medium enterprises. At the launch of the program, stakeholders reiterate their commitment to the program.
Our commitment towards the technology and creative sector is likely to position these sectors as the most valuable within the non-oil space.
And we have, as everybody in the world, the capability to be able to deliver. So we cannot afford to miss out on this particular initiative.
France is proud to support this program, which aims to promote entrepreneurship and innovation in the digital technology and creative industries.
While music and the film industry have combined to put Nigeria's name on the world map, but in terms of revenue generation, fashion generates 2 trillion naira, 2 trillion against music's 300 billion.
The Bank of Industry is ready and committed to the success of this project.
This financing will also enable us to provide capital as well as loans through the Bank of Industry under the IDAS program to micro, small and medium enterprises for the purpose of additional technology and innovation into their businesses.
With the IDAS, President Buhari, yourself, Your Excellency, Mr. Vice President, and the entire federal government can take pride because you will leave behind a legacy for the future growth and dominance of Nigeria in the digital and creative industries in Africa and globally.
The launch of the IDIS program is to enhance understanding of the roles of key actors in the implementation process. Jide Onifade.
From there, in recent years, several fintech companies have emerged to entice and win new customers by providing the innovation lacking in the big banks and services such as payments, wealth management, savings and investment, as well as credit and lending using information and communication technology. How has this impacted on the Nigerian economy will be the focus of the conversation with Fikayo Adepoju, a software architect and technical writer. You're welcome to Business Express.
Thank you. Thank you very mumuch.
Good.
Thanks for having me.
Let's start with the tech demographic. Today, youth make like 65% of the population, and banks that have failed to innovate to meet the needs of these younger customers are at the risk of losing out in the medium to long term. How true is this assertion?
Well, yeah, the current generation of youths are mostly online and doing all their transactions online. So we are in a situation whereby we have these traditional banks that have been set up, but they don't have the fintech, they don't have the kind of fintech structure that it takes to be able to facilitate a lot of these payments, and they're trying to catch up with a fast-growing industry. And the current youths don't have that patience to wait for these innovations to catch up with them, because they're all online and making all these transactions, and there's a need to the pressure is on the banks to catch up with all these needs that this new crop of customers are posing to them.
I can see you're in the tech world, and
yeah,
if I'm not mistaken, you are also in this demographic, talking about the youthful demographic.
Yeah.
African startups raised like $5.3 billion in 2022, slightly more than in the preceding year, which was around 1.3 billion.
Yeah.
And 1.3 billion actually came to Nigeria alone through venture capitalists. Yeah. What does this say about the contribution of fintech in the Nigerian economy? And would you say people like you and other youth who have ventured into this area of technology are actually benefiting from these grants that are coming in?
Yeah, I think it's an evidence to how much we've grown, how much the fintech space is beginning to make its mark on today's financial activities, and it can no longer be ignored. Like you said, Nigeria alone accounted for 1.3 of the entire investment that was made. That is roughly 20%. And yeah, I believe that it's just a very encouraging and exciting testament to how far we have gone in this area, and the best is yet to come.
Okay, still talking about the startups, they are gradually encroaching into the service areas that previously fell on the top of the traditional banks. While some see that as a blessing in disguise, more like some are of the view that it's not too good for competition. I don't know what's your stand on that.
Okay, there is no growth without disruption, and it's a known reality now that these fintech companies have come to stay. But the fears of people are actually is quite valid, because these traditional systems have been helping us get our things done. However, not optimal, but have been helping people get things done over the years. And finances is a very sensitive thing to everybody very sensitive about money. So it is a matter of trust. How much can they trust this new companies and these very, very young establishment to undo their money? Imagine someone that has been keeping money in First Bank for like past 20 years and has never had any cause to worry. Now you want him to transfer a bulk of that money onto a platform that's just 2 years old. So the fears are real, and there's nothing that fintech is here to stay, so it will continue to grow. And I think as it makes more ground and there is more adoption, people will begin to have more trust and more confidence in what these services can do and help them achieve, because this is the future, and that future is inevitable.
Okay, a lot have been said about as a central bank cashless policy. What does it mean for you guys in the fintech industry? Yes, we had issues of failed transactions, which we are still experiencing now at that point of that cash crunch period. But then we've had smaller wallets through fintechs that get to be so very fast. What kind of technology is being deployed? And for those people who are being careful not to put their monies, like you said, you are using an old generation bank and keeping a lot of money, and now you have this fintech space coming in, giving you some wallets. How careful should people be in putting their monies into the smaller wallets?
Okay, so for the first question about what this means for the fintech industry, I think it means opportunity, because this is a conscious effort by the government to say, yeah, we are making the transition from cash, which is the default currently, to online payment services. So it's because no matter how fancy these ideas are and all these pretty fintech ideas are, if they're not adopted, then there will be no real value that is going to be experienced. So it's a big opportunity for fintech companies to grow, to scale up. It's also a sign of trust that the government is beginning to trust these companies to handle one of the most sensitive parts of the activities of Nigerians, which is their finances. So yeah, for me, I think it means trust. It means it's a big opportunity for fintech companies to grab and to also scale their activities across board. And yeah, as to the sensitivity of keeping money on these platforms, we've had very, very wonderful examples in fintech companies like PiggyVest that I have also used personally to keep money for years. But I think, like I said, the fears are valid, and as this, that's why a lot of fintechs today try to be as transparent as possible. They publish their finances, they publish their yearly numbers, tell you how many transactions they've been able to process. And as more people see this data and see that people have been using these platforms successfully, I think the adoption will continue to grow and people will have more confidence to put more of their money on these platforms.
Okay, in lending credence to what you just said, talking about fintechs have come to stay and they're actually taking a better chunk of the traditional space. And that leads us to the point where Nigeria's e-payment transaction has actually surged to 55% in January 2023. What does this imply for the fintech ecosystem, and what is actually driving this growth besides the cashless policy?
Okay, so if we're taking data from January 23, I would say that there's a bit of an anomaly in that data because there was a naira scarcity. So we had a huge shift to online platforms, which people wouldn't have done if they were not under that kind of pressure. One of the big parts of that huge surge is the fact that we had a lot of first-time users. There were a lot of people that never used bank apps or never used any form of online services or fintech companies to facilitate payments, but because of the cash crunch, a lot of people actually moved to this platform. So yeah, it's interesting, the data that has been seen from January to now, but a big factor to that is the cash crunch. But be that as it may, there are more and more online services today, right? Like almost everything that can be online is online. And because of the portability of these services, people are moving to online options to get this service. For example, loans, most loans are online now. Majority of the streaming services are online. Most of us don't go to cinemas to go and watch movies anymore. We just wait for it to come out on any of these streaming platforms. And also, because of the ease and the fact that these transactions are not time-bound. I don't have to think of how my bank is going to close by 4 p.m. and I won't be able to make any transaction. I can just do it online. I can buy clothes online on Instagram. I can do my shopping anytime. These are also things that I've made, because of the availability of services at any point in time and the fact that you can pay at any time, more people are shifting to online options to get things done. And also, online avenues give you more options. They give you a myriad of options. For example, I myself, I think for the past 2 years, most of my shopping, like 70% of my shopping has been online, because when I go online, I have multiple options. I can contact someone in the US, I can contact someone in Lagos to get me something here in Abuja. So yeah, those kind of things are attractive to people because of the benefit that it offers in terms of variety, in terms of ease of payment, in terms of availability 24/7. So yeah, more people are moving online now.
Okay, talking about support for fintech startup companies, recently the African Development Bank has signed like a $225,000 agreement to support African fintech networks. We've also had support from Silicon Valley as well as some other tech companies in China, America, and across the world. With this support coming into Nigeria and more younger people getting into the fintech space, is it not worrisome that we don't have a national policy here in Nigeria?
Okay, for me, I would say not really, because fintech companies are basically facilitators of financial activities that have been regularized for a very, very long time. So it's not like they are operating activities that don't have strong policies. Loans have policies, payments have policies. But yeah, I understand that there has to come to a point whereby we have to have a national policy specifically defined for fintech. And I think what I would like to see then is a policy that is aimed towards growth. That is aimed towards growth and support for fintech companies, and not one that feels like some sort of a clampdown. And also, when such policies are made, it's going to be beneficial to have stakeholders in the fintech industry making these policies, and not just politicians or people that have no stake in the industry making laws for the industry. So yeah, like I said, fintech companies basically facilitate activities that have already been regulated. But when it comes to having a national policy, I would like to see a situation whereby we have people that are stakeholders in fintech being the ones that are involved in making such policies.
I'm sure that's going to happen.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Mr. Adepoju, for sharing your deep thoughts with us at this particular point in time. And I tell you, we from this end, we're going to be monitoring the progress of the fintech and startup companies in Nigeria. Thank you for sharing your time with us.
You're welcome.
Moving on, the Securities and Exchange Commission has reiterated that protection of investors in the capital market is a top priority of the Commission. This was at the Post-Capital Markets Committee meeting in Abuja. Bosset Abel reports.
In the ISV,
money laundering, Ponzi schemes, e-dividend, investors' protection, and developing Nigerian economy are some of the topical issues generated from the first hybrid Post-Capital Markets Committee meeting.
The SEC will continue to apply zero tolerance to money laundering, terrorism, and proliferation of defense financing obligations.
Attracting foreign and retail investors for Nigeria as an investment destination, the Director General Lamido Yuguda said more work needs to be done to stimulate growth of the economy and make the market more attractive to investors, especially from the non-oil sector.
If you have a higher generation of foreign exchange from non-oil sources and a reduced utilization of foreign exchange to import refined petrol, you find that these two should give you a much better situation where you can now use the greater availability of foreign exchange to meet the needs of investors.
With the growth potential of the Nigerian capital market, the DG reaffirmed the Commission's commitment to building and maintaining a vibrant, fair and transparent market for investors and issuers alike. In Abuja, Boss said it.
Let's now take a trip to the commodities market. The global economy is not devoid of critical developmental concerns as participants at the ongoing spring meetings weigh on solutions. United Nations Deputy Secretary General Amina Mohammed joined a panel of speakers to explore central questions around what it will take to address some of the most critical issues of our time. Liakatun Babatunde reports that it was a platform to showcase the African leading example.
Existential threats of climate change, impacts of COVID-19 pandemic, the Russian invasion of Ukraine, rising inflation and increased fragility have injected volatility and uncertainty in the global economy. These realities may continue for a while. Development actors are mobilizing public and private financing, using knowledge, identifying the right policy interventions, working effectively with partners, and scaling up successful development interventions. They say there is a need for international tax cooperation to meet financing gaps that include a $250 billion demand for energy transition.
What we are doing at the UN is to mobilize at the global level on the issues that we can bring to the table, whether it is finance, it is the transitions on energy, on food, and to agree how we will go about landing those at the country level. That's a partnership discussion.
Having an integrated regional market and having access to international energy markets in an inclusive manner is quite key in our energy strategy.
Cooperation is key, and worthy of note is Africa's response to the coronavirus pandemic.
Africa CDC was the best performing intergovernmental organization during the COVID-19 pandemic. And I say that because under the constraints that the continent had, the kind of results that we produced were unprecedented in many ways.
We need to see how we can, in a time of fiscal stress by countries, mobilize the necessary resources, but also tap increasingly into private sector resources so they can accompany our efforts, be it in middle-income countries, be it in the low-income countries.
A Accelerating development in an age of global crisis is the theme of this session, and panelists insist partnership on all fronts would help foster solutions to common problems. In Washington, D.C., Liakatung Babatunde.
And now to the global market update with Bosede Ebo.
It largely rose following the moves of Wall Street as the U.S. Producer Price Index signaled further signs of cooling inflation. Japan's Nikkei 225 led gains in the region and rose 1.2%. The Hang Seng Index in Hong Kong was up 0.46%. And in mainland China, the Shanghai Composite rose 0.6%. European stocks edged higher on Friday, set for their longest weekly run of gains since early December on speculation the Federal Reserve and other central banks are nearing the end of their hiking cycles. The German DAX was up 0.4%, with UK's FTSE rising 0.34% and the French CAC advanced 0.3%. U.S. stock futures slipped early Friday as investors looked to the start of corporate earnings season while considering what the latest inflation data implies about the economy. Futures tied to the Dow Jones Industrial Average lost 0.22%. S&P 500 futures were 0.16% lower and Nasdaq 100 futures shed 0.36%. African stocks, like their U.S. counterparts, mostly ticked down, with only South Africa and Morocco bucking the trend.
It's again on a Monday at 3 p.m. for another package. I'm Benny Adams saying enjoy your weekend.